This video walks NOVAtime supervisors and administrators through the dashboard, through managing timesheets and approving timesheets, and managing time off requests. The first screen you see when launching into NOVAtime as a supervisor or administrator is the user dashboard. At the top of the screen is the Assist panel. The Assist panel shows the current pay period by default. If you have multiple pay cycles, for example, a weekly pay cycle for hourly employees and semi-monthly pay cycle for salary employees, you can adjust what pay cycle you are reviewing in the Assist panel by the pay cycle filter. You can use the additional drop-down and arrows to review other pay periods information from the Assist panel. On the left side of the Assist panel is the exception area. Your exception area is configurable and may show different items than currently shown on my screen. Usually, clicking on an exception launches you to the timesheet page and filters the employees down to only those with that exception. If your exception does not filter the timesheet page, contact your support team. At any point in time that you are away from the dashboard and want to come back, click on the Home button at the top of the screen, just to the right of where it reads EmPower HR. The Time Off Request status area shows how many requests are pending, approved, declined, cancel pending, or modify pending for that pay cycle for that pay period. Cancel pending is when an employee has already been approved for the day off, but now would like to cancel that day off. Modify pending is when an employee is attempting to modify the number of hours in an already approved request. Similar to the exceptions area, clicking on any of the status types in the time off request status launches you to the page where you can manage that data, the scheduler category request page. On the far right-hand side of the Assist panel is the timesheet status area. This area shows how many employees that you currently have access to are currently in each timesheet status. Your timesheet status area may have more or less options than what is currently shown on the screen. Unopened means a timesheet has no punches or pre-populated data. Once an employee punches, or if the system auto-populates records, such as salary hours or approved time off, the timesheet moves to the open status automatically. Open status is when a timesheet has data to review. Typically, submit status indicates that the employee has reviewed the timesheet and has submitted it for review to their supervisor. Typically, approved status indicates that the supervisor or manager has reviewed the timesheet, made any corrections, and approved it for payroll processing. Typically, payroll status either means that the highest level of approval has happened in the system, such as a payroll manager reviewing the timesheet and approving it, or that the timesheets have been processed for payroll. Clicking on any status launches you to the Attendance Category Summary page. From there, you can see which employees are in each status. Along with the Assist panel, there are 3 other dashboard gadgets that are most commonly used. The Time Off Request Calendar shows all the employees that you have access to, and if they have time off requests on certain days of that month. If your gadget is closed like mine, click on the plus sign on the top right side of the gadget, and then click the lock symbol if you want the gadget to remain open all the time. Depending on how your system is set up, this calendar can show pending, approved, which we also call leave shared, or a combination of the both. Clicking on a day with a number opens up a box that shows the details of that day. This box shows all the employees that you have access to and their request for that day. Clicking on a name from this box launches you to the Scheduler Category Request page, where you can then manage that request. You can also use the navigational arrow just to the right of the Time Off Request title to launch into the request page. You will find that there are multiple ways to get to the most commonly used pages in the system. Use whichever option works the best for how you use the system. The next gadget is the Message gadget. The Message gadget shows any messages about pending time off in the system. Just like with the Time Off Request gadget, I'm going to click on the plus sign and then the lock to keep this gadget open. You can hover over any message to see the details, or click on the message to launch into the Message Center. This is the same information you receive in your email about the time off request. The last gadget is the User Reports gadget. Now this page can get a little picky, so it moved my User Reports gadget to the bottom here. I'm just going to hover over the gadget until I get these crossbars, and I'm going to click and drag it up. This gadget is also minimized, so I'll click on that plus sign, and then the lock to keep it open. The User Reports gadget shows any reports that you have created, customized, and saved, or as we call it, published, in the system. This gadget also shows you reports that other supervisors or administrators have created and shared with you. Click on the report to launch into that report and view that data. As you're navigating around the dashboard, feel free to click on drop-downs, arrows, boxes, and see what that leads you into the system. The last two things about your dashboard are going to be flipping to your employee side of the system and further adjusting the properties of your dashboard. This information is found in the blue circle icon on the far right-hand side of your screen. Click on it. The Myself option will flip you into your individual employee view of the system, where you as an employee would manage your timesheets and manage your time off requests. The Settings option allows you to activate and deactivate other dashboard gadgets. So we can see here that I have a couple of other gadgets that are not checkmarked, meaning they're available for me to use but are not currently on my dashboard. To add these items to my dashboard, I would simply check the box for the gadget I'd like to add, and then save at the top left-hand side of the page. Once I'm done managing the dashboard setup from my settings screen here, click on that dashboard icon to launch back into the main dashboard. Any gadgets you've added will now appear, and any gadgets you have unchecked will disappear. Next, let's manage our timesheets. I can either click on an exception from the exception area of the Assist panel, or I can go into the menu, hover over the attendance category, and click on Timesheets. The only difference is that when I go to the timesheet from the menu, it launches the timesheet page without any filters or sorts. When I go into the timesheet by clicking on something from the dashboard, the page filters based on what I clicked on. On the left-hand side of the page is your employee list. Notice the search bar at the top, timesheet status and exception filter dropdown, and the hour sort options. Also pay attention to the filter button. This is where you filter your employees by the different groups or pay rules in your system. When you've selected a group or a pay rule to filter, that word filter shows in red. Click on an employee's name to launch into their timesheet. Let's start with fixing a missing punch. There are two different types of missing punches in the system. The first type is when an employee simply forgets to punch out at the end of their day. To fix this type of missing punch, find the spot where the punch is missing, click on it, and add the time. No need to get fancy with extra zeros or colons. When you click away from the cell, the system adjusts to match the current formatting. Make sure to save the page. If your employee has a schedule in the system, you may be able to see the different exceptions in the In Express and Out Express columns. Click on the header to see what the abbreviations mean for that column. For Maggie, on Sunday, it looks like she was laid out by 15 minutes according to her schedule. The other type of missing punch is one that happens in the beginning of the day or in the middle of the day. In this example, the employee's first punch of the day was at 12 p.m., the next punch was at 12:30, and the last punch was at 4:30. It looks like the missing punch was the first punch of the day, which should have been at 8 a.m. We can also see that this employee was tardy by 240 minutes according to their schedule. Click on the Insert Repost button. Select the day, enter the time, click OK. Click OK on that second box. The system adds the punch onto the timesheet where it belongs chronologically and then is able to calculate the hours for that day. In this case, we can also see that the system is triggering a meal, showing us that the punch out from 12 to 12:30 is a meal for 30 minutes. To manually add records to the timesheet, go to the next available row, select the date, select the appropriate pay code, and then either add in the in and out times if entering work hours, or the number of hours in the regular column for pay codes that don't require in and out times, such as PTO or FMLA. If needed, click in the speech bubble in the Notes column and add a note to this entry. Click OK. After adding all the missing time, don't forget to click the Save button. To delete a row of information, checkmark the row and hit Delete. To delete a single punch, click in the cell and hit Delete on your keyboard and save the page. You can always review the timesheet summary at the bottom of the page to make sure the timesheet hours add up as they should. Lastly, when the timesheet is ready to go for payroll, click the Approve button on the top right-hand side of the timesheet. If you need to make any additional adjustments prior to payroll being processed, you can temporarily click the Undo Approval button, make any adjustments as required, and hit the Approve button again. Once payroll has been processed for this pay period, you will have to reach out either to your administrator or to your support team. Do you remember from the dashboard that we have that timesheet status gadget, where we can click on the status to launch into the timesheet summary? I'm going to click on the approved status here. This is going to bring us to the timesheet summary page. It's currently filtering us to just those employees that are in approved status. Keep in mind that there are different sorts and filters at the top of this page. You can click on an employee's name to launch in that employee's timesheet. You can also click on the header of a column to sort the employees on this page by that data. Next, let's manage those time off requests. Remember, we can click from multiple places on the dashboard to get to the request page. I'm going to click on the navigational arrow in the time off request calendar. The first thing to pay attention to on the request page is the date range filter. On the right-hand side of the page, we can see that we are currently seeing all time off requests for the dates between February of 2022 and April of 2022. The end month does automatically expand out to the furthest out request that your employees have. However, you can also focus on individual pay periods by clicking on the All drop-down and selecting Pay Period. Here you can now select the pay cycle and the pay period you specifically want to review. I want to see all the requests in the system, so I'll click back in the drop-down and change it back to All. Towards the top of the page, we can see that there are 9 total requests. 4 are pending, 4 are approved, and 1 is in cancel pending status. We are filtered to the pending status since that option is outlined in red. Hovering over the calendar on the right-hand side of the page allows you to see who has requests on each day and the status of those requests. You can also filter the calendar by the drop-down to only view requests in a specific status. To manage a pending request, I'll click on the employee's header to view their details. From here, I can see the date of the request, the pay code, the number of hours requested, the current hours available to use, the date the request was made, the current status of the request, and any notes the employee may have applied to this request. To manage a single request, go to the status column for that day and select the new status. To manage multiple requests, check the boxes off to the left-hand side and use the Change Selected button. You can add a note that gets sent to the employee by clicking on the Notes speech bubble. And most importantly, save the page when you are done and ready to commit these changes. When you click Save, the system adds those approved records to the timesheet, deducts the hours from the employee's accrual balance, updates the calendars, and notifies the employee via their message center and by email. You can always adjust the status of a request as long as it hasn't been processed for payroll. Just find the request by their status, change the status, update any notes as required, and save the page. This will re-notify the employee that the request is changed and let them know what the changes were. I do suggest reviewing the little notification area to make sure that you get no errors from managing the requests. Next, we are going to manage the Cancel Pending request. Click on the Cancel Pending status, expand the employee's details. Now here, if I click Approve, that means I am approving the cancellation of this PTO day, and the employee would be expected to come into work as previously scheduled. If I decline, that means I'm declining the cancellation of the PTO day, and the employee would be expected not to come into work and to take their PTO. Add a note and click Save. Any changes you make in the system do notify out to the employee via their message center as well as through email, so the employee is always up to date on what the status of each request is. The last page to review today is the Accruals History page. Employees can always review their own history of earnings and usage from their side of the system, but you can also review it from yours. Go into your menu, hover over the attendance category, and click on Accruals. Click on the employee you'd like to view. expand the history area for that pay code and the dates. The newest records are on top. If we start from the bottom, on 3/1, I gave this employee 120 hours. The post type is U for user adjusted. The next line up is March 25th. The post type is T, which is a timesheet usage. The employee carried over 120 hours from the previous line, used 8 hours, and the resulting available balance is 112. You can also see in the notes column that this was usage. As we go up each line in this usage, we can still see the same results. On 3/28, the employee carried over 112 hours from the previous record, used 8, and the resulting balance was 104. You can always use the notes column on the far right-hand side of the page to view more details about system-generated events. The other main one you'll see is an S for system accrual, which is when an employee would earn hours based on the accrual rule they are assigned to. I can get to the timesheet directly from the dashboard by clicking on a couple of different options. I can also navigate to the time off request page from the dashboard from a couple of different options. If I wanted to make this accruals page easier to access without always having to go into the menu, the first time I launch into the page, I'll see this tab at the top and click on the image to add a star. That means every time you flip into your view of the system as a supervisor or administrator, that tab will always be at the top of the page. To launch into that data, simply click on the tab. Thank you for watching the video for supervisors and administrators on using the NOVAtime system.